All right, this lesson is part 1 of section 4.4 on rate of change. So today our objective is to determine the rate of change for a given table of values. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. It says that Kelly runs at a rate of 6 miles per hour. The table below shows how far Kelly runs after 3 hours. In other words, after 0 hours, she's run 0 miles. After 1 hour, she has run 6 miles. After 2 hours, now she's run a total of 12 miles, and after 3 hours, she's run a total of 18 miles. So from our table, we can see that for every increase in an hour, right, for every increase in an hour, she runs 6 more hours. So to fill in the blank here, it says Kelly runs an additional 6 miles for every additional 1 hour that she runs. Okay, so this sentence here that we just wrote, all that is describing something called a rate of change. So a rate of change is just a ratio. In a ratio, we like to show ratios as fractions. So we're going to see rate of changes that are just fractions, and they describe how one variable changes compared to how another variable changes. So in this particular example, it was describing how many miles she runs compared to how many hours she's running. So a rate of change is also only going to describe linear functions. Now that's what we've been working with. We call them linear equations, and when we graph them, it's just a kind of another fancy word to describe a linear equation. We can call it a linear function. Now, one of the things that we're going to have to do is fill in tables based on a rate of change. So here's a sentence that describes a rate of change for us. It says, as x increases by 1, y is going to decrease by 3. So let's go ahead and try to fill out this table. So we want to increase the x values by 1. So that means we're going to increase 5 to 6. And then at the same time, though, the y value decreases by 3. So we're going to take away 3 from this 10 here to get 7. So as x goes up by 1, the y goes down by 3. Okay, so off to the side I can write that out. As x is going up by 1, the y is going down by 3. So let's keep filling out that table. The next value would be 7 for x, and then if we subtract 3 from 7, we get 4. If we add 1, we get 8, and if we subtract 3, we get 1. So the last point here, I'm going to add 1, and then I'll take away 3 from 1 to give me negative 2. So this table here describes this rate of change. As x increases by 1, y is going to decrease by 3. Now to answer part B, it says, what is the change between the y values? Well, we actually found that already, right? We had to use that in order to fill out the rest of this table. We know that every value in the y table is going to go down by 3. So the change here is negative 3. Now the change in the x values, to answer part C here, remember we increased every x value by 1. So we're going to write that it's positive 1. Now a rate of change, here's just another way of describing what a rate of change is. Remember, it's a fraction, right? It's a ratio. It describes always the change in the y values over the change in the x values. So that's really important. We're going to do change in the y values over change in the x values. So this, whoa, didn't mean to get so big on you. This triangle here, that means change. It's actually delta, which is a Greek letter, but we're going to say that that little triangle just means the change in the y over change in the x. Okay. So what is the rate of change here? Well, the change in y we said was negative 3. So rate of change, remember it's the change in y over change in x, and we just said that the change in y here, whoa, jumping around a lot, sorry. Center it again. Okay, so the change in y was negative 3, and the change in x was positive 1, which means we have negative 3 over 1. So that's our rate of change here in this particular example. All right, we're going to finish off the lesson here with one more practice problem. Here it asks us to find the rate of change and write a word description of the rate of change. So remember, for the rate of change, we want to know what the change in the y values is and compare that to the change in the x values. So let's go ahead and look at how the table is moving here. I can see that in the x values, they're increasing by 1. So they're going up by 1, right? Every single time we're increasing by 1. In the y values, we're increasing by 5, right? So to get from 5 to 10, we have to add 5. To get from 10 to 15, we add 5 again. So the rate of change is going to be the change in y over the change in x. The change in y here was positive 5, and the change in x was positive 1. A positive over a positive is going to stay positive. And I'm going to keep writing them as a fraction We can also just write it as 5. Either way would be fine, but that's our rate of change. Now, in words, when we describe this, we'd have to make sure we write this entire sentence out, so please make sure in your classwork tomorrow that you do this properly. You're going to say that as x increases by 1, the y increases by 5. Okay, we'll do a couple more practices in the warm-up problems, and then you'll have the rest of the time to work on your classwork. But nice job, and we'll see you guys tomorrow in class.